What's up, guys? Happy Tuesday. Welcome back to another episode of Eat, Train, Prosper. Today is a Dolo episode, like solo, but two, I guess. Dolo, Bryan, and myself. And what we are going to be talking about is Bryan has recently made available the ability to follow his exact training program, which is, I'm sure, something you got questions about that you're finally like, yes, let's do this. Let's make it an option.
Yep.
So we're going to talk a lot about that. Why he's doing it, where you're going to be able to get it, where you can follow it, which is going to be super, super cool. But before we jump into the meat and potatoes of that, Bryan, how's your last 7 days been?
Yeah, maybe even go back like 21 days because we've had guests on the past 2 weeks. So I went to Mexico. I got back from Mexico. My nanny's back in the mix. Everything's good there. It's snowing here. We got like 4 inches, maybe 3 inches last night, and it hasn't stopped all day. So I don't know when this shit is going to stop. It took my nanny like over an hour to get here. It's supposed to be like a 20-minute drive today. So that is our world at the moment. A couple other little small updates. My son is signed up for ski lessons, and so we're supposed to go every Saturday morning, which was cool the first time. We tried to go last week, and we left the house at 7:30 a.m. instead of at 7 a.m., and we got turned around at Nederland, which is like the town before the access road to the resort, and they were basically like, there's no parking, you can't come today. So the ski lessons are 6 sessions for $700, plus I bought myself like a season pass, and like it sucks in that one day to be like, okay, we didn't get to go skiing, but I just hope this isn't something that continuously occurs, week to week, where now I leave at 7, but everybody else left at 7 because they realize that you have to leave earlier, and suddenly 7 o'clock is the new 7:30, and I never get to ski. So who knows? We'll see how that goes. I have
there's a solution for that. You just got to leave earlier.
Even earlier. Yeah. But so here's
six.
This is the downside to that though, dude, because you'll understand this with kids. But if we get to the resort too early, then there's just endless amount of time for my son to be sitting in annoying ass ski gear, tromping around in ski boots, cold as fuck or like bored as fuck in the lodge, and basically just finding reasons not to do ski lessons. So you really want to find that, like, you want to toe that line and get as close as you can to arriving at the latest point that you can while still making it.
I definitely hear that.
But on the good side of things, I get to go back to Mexico again. I booked a trip with just the dudes. So me and a couple guys that I've become friends with here around Boulder are taking a trip to Mexico February 3rd to the 7th. And so that will be a much different Mexico trip than the last one, where I think I talked about, how hard it was having kids and not having childcare and blah, 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 all the things. So now I get to get away and do it again, like an adult would. And yeah, the only other update I have is that I have just very recently gotten into the idea of nose breathing during cardiovascular exercise. Because the propensity is for almost everybody to mouth breathe. And so I actually Googled this because I was curious. I was like, I wonder if I just mouth breathe during aerobic exercise, or if this is just like a thing that everybody does. And it said that most people do mouth breathe, but then it went into this big thing about how much better it is if you can nose breathe. So what I've started doing is going for 20-minute walks. And the first one, I like struggled to nose breathe the whole time. I didn't even realize I mouth breathed like during walks too. And then the second one, I really kind of got in my rhythm, focused on my breathing, and I was able to make it through the whole 20 minutes breathing only through my nose. And so this is kind of like a cool challenge that I want to try to integrate into my life now is, okay, I can now walk for 20 minutes breathing through my nose. I wonder at what point, maybe in a week or 2 weeks or something like that, I'll try jogging for a few minutes and breathing through my nose, and then seeing if maybe I can progress that a few more minutes. And yeah, I'm just kind of one of those things, always trying to try new stuff and get better. So
I don't want to derail the conversation here. Is there anything beyond just the simple challenge of it? Like, is there something that you read or whatever that's like, okay, there's a net benefit for circulating cortisol levels, for cardiovascular capability? Is there anything more?
Yeah. So it's like when you breathe through the mouth, it's like, you're revving like a V8. Like you're getting your gas mileage is really low, essentially. Whereas when you breathe through your nose, Google said that you filter the carbon dioxide much better. So you end up getting much more pure oxygen into your body. And so when you become efficient at that, you actually are more efficient at energy production and conservation. So
That is really cool. I remember somewhat recently, like in the last 6 months, I don't remember why, but I did like a bike session, like a stationary bike, just breathing through my nose, like through like for like a warm up. It must have been either something I read. It was really difficult.
yeah,
And like I wasn't biking like hard, like literally just getting blood into like my quads and hamstrings type of deal. And I remember being like, for maybe like 3 minutes, I did it. And I was like, this is damn near like twice as hard as I expected it to be.
yeah, no, totally. I actually think that if we have listeners from the endurance community, which I'm sure that we do, go ahead and comment below in the YouTube or whatever, and drop whatever you know about nasal breathing and cardiovascular exercise. Because from what I understand, just because I pick things up on the periphery as being in the industry for a while, nose breathing during long runs is actually like a training tool that is used for advanced athletes and marathoners and things like that. So I'd be curious what kind of information people have on that.
Yeah, I feel like I have seen that before as well, but I just don't know the mechanisms or the reasons, but I feel like that is something I have seen.
Yep, for sure. So what is going on in your world, dude?
Okay, so I have two things. One is kind of funny at my expense. The other is, man, just me being super transparent. So just yesterday, I realize I need to pull things out of my life. I have been, I don't want to say like struggling, but I guess struggling for Aaron where he normally operates at for the past couple months of just things that generally give me like a lot of joy. It's diminished. So like my training, my desire to really go really hard and lift weights, it's been more of like a this is what I do, not this is what I want to do type of thing. And it's begin to bleed into like how I like my nutrition has been, hey, I need to meal prep because this is what I do, not because there's like any desire there. And what I realized is like I stacked too many things in my life. So I've been kind of performing kind of below across the board because I just have too much on my plate. So this week I pulled out of like a group thing I was in. I recently wrapped up my business coaching engagement with my coach. I even canceled I reached out to my coach Jason and was like, listen, like I've the last like month and a half, I have just not been operating how I normally have for like the past, year and a half of this relationship. Like I just need a break. Like I have too much going on in my life. And when I really sat and thought like my priority is my clientele, delivering the best possible coaching experience there, so I'm really just peeling back a lot in my life so that I can just focus there and then perform really well there. And it's hard to be really honest with yourself about these things. And like a trait of mine is I really like to think that I'm like superhuman. Like I can just handle all of this stuff. Like there's something about me that's special. It's something I like to tell myself, but in reality, like it couldn't be any further from the truth. I am very average on a lot of things. And it was just hard to be honest with yourself. Like I'm doing too much. I'm going to pause my Spanish classes, which I've been taking for 2 years straight now, because I haven't been progressing because I don't have the time to dedicate to it because I'm spread too thin. So that was my big realization yesterday. And just that like I'm peeling back my life to what I really, really, truly is most important to me and excelling at. And then once I get some projects done and open things up, I will begin to layer things back into my life. So that's the big one.
I love that. It's great that you created like a hierarchy of importance. Like I almost wonder if you like made a chart and you were like, okay, here are the things that I have, and here's what's really important, and here's what's not that important type thing, or you did it in your brain or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, some of the things are like hobby goals, right? I want to be bilingual, so that is where the Spanish goal came in. I have plenty of time there, so that's one that I will just pause on. My personal like nutrition and physique related goals, right? Like coming out of having COVID, I'm still down a few pounds, even though everything I've done, and it it does bother me a little bit, but at the end of the day, like my clientele, my biggest goal of scaling my business and delivering results to my clients, like my clients don't give a fuck if I have 173 pounds of lean body mass or 169. Like they don't give two shits. All they care about is like the quality of the education I get them and me helping them get them results. Yeah. That's what they care about. So as much as I like to tell myself like, no, you need that 4 pounds of lean body mass that I lost through lower volume, being sick, keeping my shit as tight as I normally do, it really doesn't matter. Eventually I'll get back there, and once I enjoy it more, again, type of deal. So it was just me being really honest with myself. Like, what are our top priorities? And we need to peel back everything else in pursuit of that. Because I could just feel like I had been treading that line of like kind of, as much as I hate to say it, burnout, but not like a traditional burnout, just I'm trying to do too many things at once. And the only way that my life I've been able to facilitate it is I have no true responsibilities. Like there is no children I need to take care of. I'm very fortunate. My significant other is pretty much doing the same thing in the other room. So we can both work 7 days a week and it's okay. We can work till 10 p.m. because there's no other commitments. But I know in order to really scale to that next level and and become that next evolution of where I will be in the future of like a husband and a father, I can't operate in this current capacity because it just doesn't work that way.
No, I love that.
Yeah. It's me just realizing that I'm my own problem and putting in things to fix it so I can continue to do what's most important to me.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, putting your clients first, can't beat that.
So that is my like big, adult Aaron update. My second more funny update is my second day back in the gym, which was Wednesday. I went in Tuesday just to like get some blood moving type of thing. It was 9 days off from the gym in total. I go in, I'm working out, and I'm like, all right, Aaron, we're going to do abs today. I got in a bad rhythm of skipping abs again. I'm like, I'm going to do it. So I do, there's like a weighted crunch kind of machine thing. I do 1 set of 8, and I just loaded it up like at a decently moderate load. I do that. I go in to do my second set. I do 1 rep, and my like right at like my belt line, super low, fucking locks up like so bad that my immediate thought was like, I just ruptured something in like my abdominal wall. Like I think I just gave myself a hernia. And what it ended up being was this incredibly intense cramp, so bad that I couldn't even stand up because it's like pulled, it's like pulling me over. And I like kind of panic and like grab my water, and I'm like shuffling over to like where my bag is because like I got to get the fuck out of the gym. And Cody McBroom and his team of coaches was down doing like a weekly retreat thing. So like they were in the gym, and then one of the coaches, Bryan, like came up to me and he's like, hey Aaron, I'm Bryan. I want to introduce myself. And I'm like, oh my God, not fucking now. Not any other time, but now. And I'm like, I'm sorry, dude. I can't sit here and talk. I have something bad just happened. Like I got to get the fuck out of here. And I was like, any other time I would love to sit and talk and stuff. But I was like, I'm having like a 911 scenario. So I get my shit and I like hobble out of the gym, and I'm like, I just got to get home. Maybe Jenny can take me to the hospital or something. Like, I don't know what the hell's going on. And it wasn't until like halfway the drive home, it finally released, like 20 minutes. It was the worst cramp of
Was it like a massive release? Like it was like like the whole thing just kind of like disintegrated?
Because I tried to like set the seat so like I didn't have to, because like even if you're sitting up, right? Like you still have your core engaged, and when it's completely cramped up, like it is incredibly painful. And it was so bad that my lower back started getting really tight too. And like I didn't do any lower back stuff, like, and it was within minutes. So like my entire core and lower back was just smoked, and I'm like trying to sit in the seat, and then it just like slowly kind of like released, and I realized that it was just a cramp. Because at this point I was like, I think I gave myself a hernia, or I tore one of my abdominal like walls. Like it was like when I ruptured my Achilles, like 911 scenario type. And I was like, God damn it. I told myself we weren't going to do this anymore type of thing. And then it released, and then it was just super sore for like 2 days. And then I was like, okay, like I am very dehydrated still. And that's when I went and got the IV. And then overnighted like a pack of Element, and so I could just start pounding them. And then finally today, my weight was I'm like back into the 190s. At least I was like 191.2 or something. But
Nice.
From like the day before, when I got first realized I was getting sick, which was like 2 Tuesdays ago when we recorded
Right.
the episode with Mike, to like maybe day 6 or 7 of when I had COVID, I was down 9 pounds, which was crazy because
Yeah.
and now I'm just working my way back up, which kind of is something that we might talk about a little bit later in the episode if we have time. But enough about my silly ab cramp and then looking like an asshat in front of someone who's trying to introduce themselves to me. Let's jump into today's episode about your training program.
Yeah, totally cool. So here's kind of the background on how I came up with this idea. I run these general programs, right, through Paragon, through Evolved. Paragon, is a little bit more female based. Evolved, probably pretty evenly split. And I promote these programs as like, hey, follow these programs because I program them. They're my programs. They're my companies. And a number of people that follow me now are coming from this kind of same viewpoint as you and I. Like, they're super evidence-based. They're very nuance focused. They're very into a lot of this work that I've done with N1, with, just optimization of every variable type thing. And so a number of these people now have bought Evolved or Paragon subscription, checked the programming out, and then pretty much canceled within a few days and been like, this isn't what I was looking for. And like, initially I'm kind of a little butthurt and I'm like, oh, it's my programming. Why don't they like it? And then I just kind of started like thinking about it, and these same things started happening over and over the course of the last few months. And what I realized is that the programming that I put out on my stories and that I talk about in my posts and on our podcast is not exactly the same programming that's put out to Paragon and Evolved. And a couple of the small differences are that those programs, Paragon and Evolved, are still kind of free weight heavy. I still use a decent amount of barbells, a lot of dumbbells, a lot of like banded variations and stuff like that, because the majority of that audience that follows those programs at one point was based in CrossFit, or they're training at home gyms and they don't have the full kit to be able to use all of the fancy equipment and stuff like that. So I even have like on Paragon and Evolved, we have a commercial gym program called Globo Physique. And even in that one, I tend to not get too nuanced with it because I don't know what the setup is of people's gyms. Like, I don't know if they can just hold down a functional trainer for an hour, or if they even have access to dual cables, whether they have a chest supported T-bar row. Like, there's a number of different things that I'm like, okay, so then I could put in like, chest supported dumbbell row or chest supported T-bar row or something like that. So I do things like that at times, but really due to those limitations, as one part of it, that it makes it difficult for me to program the exact type of training that I'm doing for the masses, right? And then on top of that, there's a lot of like advanced techniques that I use in my training, like partials and, sets past failure, reverse drop sets, et cetera, et cetera. And again, these are things that I don't always feel super comfortable programming when it's for the masses. And I know there's going to be a couple thousand people following this or whatever. So, through realizing that, and then through the feedback that I got from these people that bought these programs and canceled, I got super excited a couple weeks ago when I was finally like, why don't I just take my programming, put it in the app, and we can call it B's program, and people can literally just follow my program as I program, as I go through it, right? Whether I'm, no matter what cycle I'm doing and what my objective is, people can decide that, hey, that's something I would like to do as well, or it's not something I would like to do. And maybe it's a better fit for them than what the general programming is or was on Paragon or Evolved at the prior time.
I love this idea, right? And I feel very strongly with everything you just said, because it's hard to make assumptions, right? Especially if someone is in a garage gym or something like that. But I think having this now available for those people who understand it's going to be nuanced, understand that it will probably maybe take a little bit more time than another one would, And there's going to be more like mental, a higher mental aspect of it, as opposed to like, okay, barbell row, 3 sets of 8 type of thing. But I'm sure a one of many reasons, right? People are drawn to you very similarly of why oftentimes people are drawn to me is because of like your physique and what you look like and how you're 39, right? 39-year-old dad, you fucking shredded and you look great, you're jacked and stuff like that. And yeah, I can see where people are like, oh, well, I want to look like Bryan, so I'm going to follow some of his programming, but it's not what you currently do. And I think, obviously as people, I hope, listen to the podcast and stuff, they realize that if you're in year 1 or year 2, that might not be necessary, but it's very realistic that once maybe you have 10 years of training or whatever, you're going to have some of these muscle imbalances and things like you and I do. And that's why we do more volume in different places and why we train the way that we do. 1, because we really, really like it. And 2, it's like as things don't matter until they do. And when you've been training for 25 years, a lot of things matter now that maybe didn't when you were training for 2 years or something like that. So I think it's super, super cool for people to be able to like hop on and just do what you're doing. And
hell yeah. No, super cool. I appreciate that. And to one of the points that you made about, it doesn't matter till it matters, or, what level of training age somebody is at. When I write these general programs for Evolved or Paragon, I have this kind of avatar in my brain of who I believe I'm programming for. And it's usually someone along the intermediate spectrum of training, like whether from early intermediate to advanced intermediate, somewhere in there, right? Because somebody that's a beginner, they could probably do fine on one of my general programs, but they would have questions on a lot of things, which is cool because we have a Facebook group and we can help them modify stuff and all that. But somebody that's super advanced, that's been training 15 years and, really struggles to even progress at all, they're the people that I think would get the most benefit from my program. So that's one thing. Like it's when you have this intermediate population for the general programs, it's like exercise selection isn't the most important. It's kind of important, but like a barbell row is fine, right? And with my general programs, another thing that I always do is this, I've talked about in the past, is progressing effort week to week. So starting with something like 2 or 3 reps from failure and then adding weight or a rep each week so that, by week 5 before deload, you get this like assessment period where you kind of test yourself and then you go to failure and you deload after that. With this program with me, there isn't this built-in kind of progression. There isn't going to be a lot of the things that are part of general programming. So I want to cover that in a second. But first I want to address a question, because I know the question that I'm going to get a lot from this is, do I think my program will work for just the masses or the general population or whatever? And like I just kind of said, I think it is a little bit more of an advanced program. So if you tend to be on that more intermediate advanced side, I think it's probably going to be a little bit more applicable. I also think that it may be more applicable for men, not to say that women potentially wouldn't want a higher effort, slightly lower volume approach. But I do think that from what I've learned through my years from reading, but also from, firsthand experiences, that women really do seem to do better with a little bit more volume than guys do. So I have 1 or 2 top sets for almost all of my lifts, and most of the women I program for will end up with 2 to 3, even 4 top sets for many of their lifts. So I would say if you're a woman following this program, you're probably either really advanced or you're somebody that responds better to lower volume than maybe other women do. To kind of address the question in general of whether I think this would work for the masses, I would say in the hierarchy of importance or of what really matters, having an individual coach that knows you and is a competent coach that's designing a program for you is going to be significantly better than following my program, because it's my program. However, I would say that it is probably a lot better than most general programs out there. When it comes to actual volume and effort, it is pretty middle of the road. So, on one extreme, you have these programs that are super, super high volume, but they're really low effort, where you're doing, 20, 25 sets, but, every set is it's basically like one of those 4 sets of 10, 4 sets of 10, 4 sets of 10, 4 sets of 10. And you're like, okay, I did 20 sets of 10, but were any of them really that hard type thing? And then on the other side of the spectrum, you have programs that really go overboard on intensity stuff, and like everything's a drop set or everything's a superset or forced reps or partials or whatever like that. So in my program, it's more middle of the road, where it's not extremely high volume, but I wouldn't say it's really low volume either. I'm between 8 and 15 sets a week for most muscle groups. And the effort is, yes, I do go past failure strategically on certain movements where it's conducive to do partial reps or reverse drop sets, usually short overloaded movements, which tend to not be as damaging anyways. So they are a little bit more susceptible to use those kind of advanced techniques. And then also I'd have things where I'm like 3 or 4 RIR or 2 to 3 RIR, like an RDL or like a pause back squat or something like that. Like we're not going to be taking one of those in my program to 0 RIR. So in my program, there's going to be everything from 3 to 4 RIR all the way to going past failure. So it's very middle of the road there as well. It also has the care that I would take as part of writing a program, because it's my program. So when you want when you want to follow a program that shows that you care about what is being put out, and that you notate things that are important to know, and you think about what you're doing week to week and where the program might be going month to month, like that's something that you want in a program that you follow, versus someone that's just arbitrarily writing stuff out and doesn't even think about where the program is going 6 months or a year from now. So those are probably some of my initial thoughts on whether it will work for the masses, and hopefully I can kind of refine that into some sort of post as we get going. But yeah, any questions on any of that, dude? Any thoughts?
Yeah. So the thing that I think I'll forget, so I want to ask first, is could you elaborate from like a very, very like a 10,000 foot level where this program might go over like the next 4 months, right? Goal is I'm assuming hypertrophy, right? So it is unlikely the next block will be like a strength block or whatever, because I feel like you haven't psychologically yet recovered from your previous strength block and how not much fun it was.
Yeah.
But yeah, just tell me and the listeners a little bit of just a high level overview.
Yeah, totally. So like we've talked about prior, I am essentially on like a 1 year lower body specialization program. It started out as like mostly a hamstring specialization, and then I kind of just realized that programming it in a manner where I have a day that focuses on hams and a day that focuses on quads is just a better use of my effort and my time. So I'll go over the exact split of the program here in a second, but what we can expect is that it will continue to be a lower body prioritization program. I personally need a little bit more volume for upper body than for lower. I tend to hold fatigue and accumulate fatigue pretty quickly in my lower body. So it doesn't need to be as high volume as it is for the upper body. So even though this is a lower body specialization program, when you actually look at the volume per muscle group per microcycle, it's actually really, really close between upper body and lower body. But if I were trying to target everything evenly, it would be significantly more volume for upper body than lower body. So we're going to continue to just kind of run this plan. The actual split itself may change over the course of a mesocycle or a couple mesocycles. But right now I'm in the first mesocycle of this split. And so that's just going to continue. There aren't going to be a ton of massive changes to the program over the next 4 months. But I do think that there will unfortunately have to be a metabolite phase in there in a few months. I haven't done one of those in a long time. So I do need to do some of that. I think that's actually a weakness in myself, is that I over prioritize and over program hypertrophy phases. And so I think that I need to have a short metabolic phase. And as we know about metabolic phases, they don't need to be really long, like 2 to 4 weeks in and out should be fine. So I think we'll probably expect one of those in the spring at some point. And then I'd like to take an assessment of where the quads and hams are in the spring, maybe do a mini cut of some sort, possibly during the metabolite phase, and just see where everything is, and then make a decision from there about whether I want to prioritize a different muscle group, because that will have been at that point maybe like 8 months of ham specialization, ham and quad. So That's a really good question, and I want to actually go over my split at the end here. Actually, why don't we just do it now since we're kind of talking about it? So
I have a question really quick.
Yeah.
Or it's kind of an insight and a question at the same time that I just want to interject because you pulled it up. You said that the upper body volume is generally higher than the lower body volume. Correct? Am I right?
If everything were even, like if I was trying to get an equal stimulus across my whole body, then there would be more upper body volume compared to lower body volume.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect. And I find the exact same thing with myself. And I know we have obviously all these crazy parallels. I don't think we talked about it on the podcast.
No, the neurotype.
Yeah, we followed up with Mike Milner, who was on 2 weeks ago, and Bryan and I have basically identical neurotypes. Like we're both 1Bs, right?
1B with a 3 secondary, yeah.
Yeah, and those were overwhelmingly both of our highest numbers. So kind of a quick aside there. But this is something that I've been thinking more of because generally my leg days or my lower body days are by far shorter than my upper body days. And it's been something I've been kind of mulling around about. And there's kind of two parts that I think. One, from a total overall, physique development standpoint, both you and I lack quad and ham department compared to our upper bodies. So my question is it because they are not less conditioned, but less properly trained or lagging in that manner? Or is it because they are much larger muscle groups and the damage that you can do is just so much more centrally fatiguing because a lot of them are axially loaded? For example, I told myself I wasn't going to train too hard my first leg day back. And then I kind of just couldn't stop myself once I was on the leg press and I got super nauseous and stuff. But I only did 4 sets, 4 working sets for my quads. And they were completely destroyed. And I was nauseous. And I was well, I guess it's time to leave the gym. I can do 4 hard sets of back. And I don't even feel a stimulus there quite yet. So it's just interesting. And when you brought that up, it kind of reminded me of that. So I wanted to ask you about it.
Yeah, I actually have thoughts on this because when you look at the exercise selection options, and the way that people generally construct their programming for upper body and lower body, you'll find that the majority of upper body movements are going to be in that short range overload, especially if you use cables. You're going to, and if you don't know a lot about exercise selection and how to create a lengthened overload via crossing the cables and stuff like that, the majority of the work that you do for your upper body is going to be short overload. So just by the nature of that, you're going to get less sore. You're going to be able to handle more volume, more sets, etc. When you look at what people generally do for their lower body, any squat or single leg squat or deadlift or single leg deadlift or hip hinge of any sort is a lengthened overloaded movement. Like you said, axial loaded. So you're getting that spinal fatigue in there as well. But you could accrue a shit ton of volume if you had a leg extension and a leg curl machine that were short overloaded, which most commercial gyms, you don't really know, but you could band it and make it short overloaded. If you just did short overloaded leg extensions and leg curls, I think you could up that volume significantly. But it's an opportunity cost of is it really worth it? Because I have these other movements that I get a lot out of too. And I can do a couple sets of these leg extensions, leg curls, and get tremendous benefit from that too. So I think exercise selection and the fatigue cost of those exercises is probably the largest player in that. My back, just like we've talked about many times, neither of our backs really get super sore from the work that we're doing with them. So I do all of these things to try to get more lengthened overload in there, like reverse drop sets and partials and hip shifts and stuff like that. And it still doesn't really get sore. So until there really is unless back movements suddenly become like squat movements where they're all just hardest at the stretch position, I just think that backs are going to be able to handle a lot more volume than legs are. And that's just kind of the way it's going to be.
Yeah. Okay. You answered that very, very well. And it's, all very true. So that was a great little aside, and thank you for a great answer.
Yeah, cool. So let's do, we'll do the split at the end. So real quick, I have a what can people expect when they sign up for B's program. So one thing you can expect is that it's going to be primarily programmed for a commercial gym. I'm going to write things like pendulum squat, but then I'll put underneath, I'll also do a leg press or a hack squat or a heels elevated barbell back squat or something like that. So I will provide people some options, but the intention will be that you have a pendulum or a hack or something along those lines. I don't train on a calendar week. This program won't be on a calendar week either. But for those people that already are like, oh, I can't do that, that's ridiculous, blah, blah. So the way that it's going to be set up is on Monday each week, I'm just going to post like 5 or 6 workouts. And you can literally just do those 5 or 6 workouts on whatever days work for you. So if it works best for you to be on a calendar week, then be on a calendar week and just always work out on the same days. For me, I prefer to go 2 days on, 1 day off, 2 days on, 1 day off, 2 days on, 1 day off. So it ends up being 6 sessions over 9 days. That's the way I set it up. But there's certainly been times where my life doesn't allow me to do that. And I either have to go like 3 in a row and then 2 off, or 1 on, 1 off, 1 on, 1 off type thing. So the program is extremely malleable, and I built it that way specifically so that if you have to do days back to back and you can't take the rest days that I recommend, it doesn't matter. You'll see that as we go through the split, that no matter what days you do in a row, it should be fine. Deload weeks on my general programs are it's 5 weeks of training to 1 week deload. I don't do that in my training. I auto-regulate deloads, and they usually happen every 5 to 8 weeks. It kind of just depends when I'm ready for them. And I actually think that you could probably do the same following this program. Like if I personally am going to take 7 weeks to do my deload, and you're like, okay, after 5 or 6 weeks, you feel ready for a deload, then just deload. Follow the deload template that's going to be out there from the first week. Like go back in the app, find the deload template, deload, and then when you pick back up, you'll just pick up slightly lower effort, but with like the week that you missed prior. So it should work out. I mean, it's not going to be the easiest thing for you, but it's certainly not going to be the hardest either. You can expect advanced terminology such as ramp up sets, RIR, partials, reverse drop set, things like that. Those are terms that I generally don't use in my general programs. I mostly because a lot of those, I use RIR, but I don't call it RIR. I call it reps from failure. We're just going to be using the terms that I use in my training, and I will assume that my audience should be able to follow along with those. For anything that you don't know, of course, you will have access to the members only Facebook group and be able to ask any questions about that. I will have video demos of all exercises, and I'm actually going to provide verbal cues written in each section. So when it's like, leg extension, pause at top, like if that's the movement, then I'm going to be like, maybe it's think about sweeping forward with the legs instead of exploding from the bottom, or, little cues like that. On a leg curl, slowly press the gas pedal versus accelerating into the movement. On a one arm press around, like make sure the shoulder doesn't rotate forward too much as going through, or on a bicep curl, like keep your elbow stable, like little cues like that I think will help people really get the most out of these movements. So I'll try to drop like 1 or 2 little cues into the app for each movement that we do. So you guys can kind of be thinking about some of the same things that I think about when I'm executing these movements. Another thing that's very different than my general programs is that everything is a repeating movement. I'm not mixing anything up. So if you're one of those people that is like, I love that you have part C, D, E, and F like changing every session, we're not doing that shit anymore, man. So what we're going to be doing instead is every week I'm going to have a little write-up at the top of the app, and I'm going to talk about the things that are changing this week. And usually they're going to be little things like, we did 3 to 4 partials on leg extension last week. This week, we're going to go for 4 to 6 partials at the end. Last time we did partials after our cable rows, but this time we're going to do a reverse drop set. Or last time we worked to 1 to 2 RIR on this first set. This time we're going to go to 0 to 1 RIR, right? So there's going to be notes under the movement or at the top of the app that kind of describes, here are the things that you should look out for this week that are changed. But as far as exercise selection and rep schemes and things like that, these things are not going to change week to week.
I love that. And that is I mean, personally, that's how I program. Like when I write a program for myself, like nothing changes. Well, I mean, things change week to week, but it's like me trying to find natural pathways for progression. But like, why am I going? I don't want to swap out my dumbbell, spider curl for something else because I want to progress that for as far as I can. I want that natural progression to see like, am I getting better? And something that you said, this is going to be like an intermediate to advanced program. Like Bryan, that ship sailed for Bryan and I years ago where we can add 5 pounds to the bar each week. Like I might think about it for me doing like a dumbbell lateral raise, like I may never progress to the next 5 pound dumbbell.
Yeah.
So I need drop sets. I need, partials and stuff like that because there's no other way I can progress it except for, if I have like a half-pound little change plate, which eventually when I have a home gym, sure. But like right now, like that's the only way to truly do it for that. So yeah, I mean, I love it. I love every bit about it.
Yeah, so regarding progression, because that's like such a good point about, our inability to be able to add weight week to week necessarily, or even a rep in that matter. One of the ways, and I took this from Kasim, because what he talks about is progressing the stimulus. And progressing the stimulus doesn't always mean adding weight or adding a rep or it doesn't have to mean that, right? So what I said earlier, where it's like on leg extensions, if we did 3 or 4 partial reps last week at the end, and then this week we did 5 or 6 partial reps, even if we didn't get any more reps with any more load on either of our leg extension sets, just the fact that we did more partial reps is a progression in stimulus. And so that's one of the things that I try to do in this program, in my programming all the time, week to week, is okay, if I get an extra rep, great. If I add weight and match reps, great. Then I don't need to do anything else because I've already progressed the stimulus. But if I don't progress a rep, I don't add weight, then I'm going to use a different tool. I'm going to add an additional partial rep. I'm going to do a reverse drop set. I'm going to do something that's going to allow me to progress the stimulus in some manner. And just that little nuanced thing has made a huge difference for me because I would go into the gym prior and mentally I was like, man, if I don't improve a rep or add weight, like this was a worthless session. I didn't accomplish anything. I didn't move toward my goals. This is bullshit, And now it's like, no, I added 2 more partial reps to my leg extensions. Like I absolutely progressed. So anyways, I think that's super important. And then kind of moving on to the final section that I wanted to talk about the program is, I guess I kind of did that. I just wanted to talk about the split mostly. So I was going to talk about progressing the stimulus and specialization cycles and changing up the split and stuff. But I think we've covered the majority of that stuff. So the current state of my train. Yep.
One thing I wanted to ask you about that I see you have a note in here is effort that I don't think we kind of talked about in it. So with like your training personally, and then with this program, do you want to explain that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, I think has been explained in that the effort is, the increasing of the stimulus week to week in some way. That's why there's like a slash there. It's like increased stimulus / effort.
Gotcha.
So, but I would say like because I think it's important as well to provide this overview, right? So I do have deload weeks. And then I usually have an intro week coming out of the deload week. So like where a deload week for me is usually either less frequency. That's my favorite way to deload is just keep training, but take more rest days. That's usually how I deload. And if I do it that way, I don't need an intro week. But if I do pull all the way back where I'm like, okay, I'm going to take, 5 to 7 days and I'm either going to take time off the gym or I'm going to significantly dial back intensity or volume, then usually I will have an intro week. And in that intro week, what I usually do is just take 1 rep further from failure. So whatever I usually do, like if I'm doing leg extensions, it's a perfect example. My leg extensions, my top set, I usually take to 1 to 2 RIR. And then my back off set, I take to 0 to 1 RIR. And so if it was an intro week, it would be 2 to 3 RIR for the first leg extension set and then 1 to 2 RIR for the second set. And there wouldn't be any like partials or anything like that afterwards. So that would just be like a very subtle, small, gradual progression back into training again, where it's still stimulative, but it's definitely not like it's not a non-training week. It's just not as hard of a training week as normal. And then most of the other training weeks until we deload are again going to kind of be what I said, progressing the stimulus, doing some partials, doing some reverse drop sets. Like most stuff that's conducive to going to 0 to 1 RIR will go to 0 to 1 RIR. And that's primarily like short overloaded movements. And then things that aren't as conducive like RDLs and squats and stuff like that will probably hang out more at like it depends on how safe it is. Like I've very rarely taken RDL past 2 or 3 RIR. But like a hack squat or a pendulum, I'm okay taking to like 1. I'm pretty happy with that. Like even when I post my pendulum sets on the story and I ask people to guess my RIR, and it's always evenly split. Like it's like 0 to 1 or 1 to 2, and it's like 50% one and 50% the other. So people are always like, it's close. Like as long as you're within that like 1-ish rep range of failure on like a back supported squat movement, I'm pretty good with that too. So yeah, does that answer it?
It does. It answers it perfectly.
So the split currently, and this is the program is set to drop in mid-February. We're thinking Monday, February 14th, which is Valentine's Day. That would be essentially the intro week because I'm going to Mexico the weekend of the 5th. And then I'm basically just going to have like a kind of refine things and just mess around in the gym for a week. And then the plan would be to drop this program when I start my intro week on February 14th. So as of right now, that's the tentative plan. And the current split is hamstrings and abs on day 1, quads, delts, and biceps on day 2. And then I have a rest day. And then it's chest and back on day 3. And then it's hamstrings, delts, and both arms on day 4. And then there's a rest day. And then quads, abs, and calves on day 5. Full upper body on day 6. And then another rest day. And then it circles back around and we restart again with hamstrings and abs.
And on the delts day, are you doing just for my own curiosity? Is rear delts considered? Do you put that on back or with delts?
I put that with delts. Yeah. So the day that is hamstrings, delts, and arms, which is the middle one. Mm-hmm. That's the day that I have that gnarly delt circuit in there where I go dual cable lateral raise to rear delt row to anterior delt press. So I do those all 3 as like a kind of mini circuit and then rest. So that delt day for sure hits all of them. The one with the quads, delts, and biceps is the delts are just a superset. So it's a short lengthened superset where I'm going dumbbell lateral raise to cable lateral raise, like superset for 2 rounds. So even on those days that are legs with some upper body, the upper body stuff is much lower volume than it is. And I use the full upper body day and then some of the other days to kind of accrue. The chest and back day, for example, are days where I'll accrue more upper body volume. And then the days where the legs are the priority, the legs are the priority.
Yeah, got it. I love it.
Sweet. Well, that's really all I have on this program. So if y'all have any questions, this is something I'm super excited about, like just because it gives me an opportunity to have people kind of follow along with what I do, which provides me motivation, but also it allows me to kind of help you guys. And like one of the things I really love to do is take people that are really interested in their training and in improving and being optimal, and then helping them do that. So if you join the program and you are in the Facebook group and you are doing your like lumbar lat pull arounds and you're like, yo, how does this work? Or am I doing it right? We post video form checks all the time. And so I would love to help you guys kind of dial in the subtle nuance of this exercise execution, because a lot of the movements I do in the program are a little bit more advanced. And so they do require a little bit of refinement of your movement pattern. And so I want to help you with that. But just remember that you don't need to be intimidated by those movements because, as Cass always says, it's not bullseye or bust. It doesn't mean that because you're not doing the movement perfectly that you're not getting tremendous benefit from that movement. It just is not necessarily as precise as it could be, but you're still training muscles and probably the majority of the right muscles. So that's super important context to take forward with you if you want to embark on this program. And please ask any questions you guys have below in the comments on YouTube or send me a DM or whatever.
Yeah, I think this is super, super cool. And to be completely honest, and this is from a purely personal standpoint, I don't write any programs like available for purchase or anything like that, but I have different ones that I've written for clientele that I give.
Yep.
And it's a lot of things that I have personally run myself, and they are more complicated, but it's because like it's just what I know. Like I'm so far removed from being like following like a 40-minute general garage gym programming. Like I'm not going to do you justice to give you that program. I'd
Yep.
be like, let's find someone who trains in their garage and puts out garage training programs.
Yeah.
You're going to get a much better program than what I could give you doing that, because it's just not what I do. Obviously you're different in that because you've been doing this for, like 2 decades type of thing, and you have gone through that. But I think it's really cool. It's just giving like you're offering people out there who are interested in this, like an avenue closer to like where you are right now. And I think a lot of guys will find that really, really interesting and just cool, right? Because like this is what Bryan's doing, and I want to follow along with this. I mean, we resonate with different people for different reasons, and I think it's cool to be able to provide something for people who are like super big fans of yours and just like how you do things and your training and your stories and stuff, to be like, I can now do that too.
Yep. Yep. And I'm excited to share that journey with them as well. So thank you, dude. I appreciate that.
Yeah, of course. So I think that's good for this episode. Let's talk about what we were going to at the end for next week. We can carve that out and talk about it. And then you will also have like the week after, so like the week it release, you will be kind of practicing that in with your second trip to Mexico.
Yeah, the second trip to Mexico though is not going to be as mild as the first one, I don't think. I mean, so these guys that I'm going with, like initially the text chat was like, let's do a lot of relaxing and like snorkeling and hanging out at the beach, right? And then like a week later, they're like, okay, I booked this like party boat at 9:30 a.m. on Saturday. And like, I was like, oh man. And they're like, do you guys want to go out and rage Thursday night when we arrive? And I'm like, no, I just been on a plane all day,
Where specifically are you going?
We're going to Tulum. So at least it's not like Cancun. It's a little more mild, but Tulum is kind of, up and coming and has a bunch of stuff to do there too. So
I think you are going to find Tulum is much wilder than Cancun.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Oh man. Okay.
When tides shift, right? Like, maybe in like the early 2000s, Cancun was like the huge party spot. But now, I mean, because we were, just to refresh it, right when we were starting the podcast, I was living in Playa del Carmen, which is like an hour. It's directly in between Cancun and Tulum.
Yep.
So, we would go down to Tulum, and there are parts where it's like chill, but if you're on like the hotel area on the beach, like it's basically just different parties going.
All right. Well, we'll see how I survive. I think it's really good that I planned that week of just like chill training when I get back, so that I can recover from everything and get my nutrition back on track and all that stuff. So I think we'll have two very different vacation experiences to talk about.
Yeah. Awesome. We'll cover it. Yeah. So as always, guys, thanks for listening. If any questions about anything from this episode, please ping Bryan. I'm sure he will give you a appropriate answer full of context and nuance. Yep. So
absolutely,
send those over to him. And then, guys, we'll talk to you next week.